Smashing. That's a lovely tree you've got up. When did you get the tree up?
So it went up 1st of December. We always have to. It's my son's 16th birthday at the end of November, so we have to get that out of the way, and then we can go Christmas mad.
I like the skeleton as well. I'm more of a Halloween guy than a Christmas guy, so I feel like that's best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, it has. It's definitely got a bit of skeleton. It's actually, I don't know if you can see that. I've got some skeleton wallpaper. It's a
Oh,
bit
hello,
dark,
mate.
actually. So, yeah, it's all a bit. I used to be a goth many years ago.
Well, I was going to say
Goth.
I was going to say I can sort of hear a bit of a goth thing actually. My favorite thing, I've said this on Twitter. It's sort of my role in life to regularly reappraise Stigma, your second record, because it's one of my favorite albums ever made, and that is kind of EMF gone goth a little bit. That record.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
I mean,
maybe it wasn't intentional.
Maybe you've never thought about that until now, but that's how I've always seen it as. God, I mean, I know we're here to talk about new music, but let's just get the Stigma Appreciation Society out of the way first. It is quite. I don't know whether dark's the right word, but the thing with that record is that I got it when I think I got it from the library when I was about 13, 14. I'd heard Unbelievable. I got Schubert's Dip, and I was like, oh, there's another record by this band I like called EMF, and it was so different to the first record. But also, it was in those days when either you'd buy a record or you'd lend a record, but you had to like it because you couldn't just scroll on to the next song on Spotify. You sort of had to invest yourself in it. And that song kind of soundtracks like me delivering papers and all the sort of stuff I did as a teenager. And I just remember listening to that record and just being like so sort of entranced by what was going on, like even down to the sleeve. Like I always remember with the sleeve being like, what's going on there then? And I suppose I was really into like X-Files and like UFOs and stuff, and I was always like, is that kind of what's going on in there? Like there was something sort of just a bit sinister about it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was probably a reaction to the first album because we got labeled as a pop band really early on.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't like that.
Right.
And I think Stigma's a strange album because the band kind of came into fruition. We'd been touring loads across America. So when we did Stigma, we were kind of more of a band. We'd been together longer between Schubert Dip and Stigma than we had from making Schubert Dips. So I think we were kind of just learning to play as musicians, and that was our roots. I was a goth. I lived the Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah, I mean, Sisters of Mercy are a band that I had no appreciation of until recently. So maybe there's something in the air. These are quite gothy times, though, aren't they? There's quite a lot to be miserable about. Like, I did an episode of the podcast with John Robb, who wrote a book about.
Oh, yeah, I know John. Yeah,
he wrote a book about goth recently. I did one with Kathy Unsworth, who wrote a book about goth, and Simon Price has just written this sort of A to Z of the Cure. Like, it feels a little bit like goth comes around when, I don't know, when times are grim and people are sort of looking for some beauty within the world.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Is Stigma all about UFOs? Because I don't know why that was, but I always used to. Maybe it's like,
yeah. I think what we did when we were in California, I think we kind of got sucked into that counterculture and UFOs, and I think for one moment I did actually believe it. I was so convinced. And
what in UFOs?
Yeah, and we needed topics to sing about, and we're only young kids growing up, and you kind of get taken in. These days, you probably get called a crackpot or whatever, wouldn't you, if you kind of express views like that, and you probably get shot down straight away. But we were just throwing ideas around. We were young.
I mean, I am a complete believer.
Good. Yes. Well, good.
good for you, James. Listen, I'm not saying the truth will out next year or the year after or the year after. We could be another 20 years, but on the historic day when it is confirmed that there is something weird going on. I would like you to think about this conversation. I think James was always a believer. And then we can both listen to Stigma and it can soundtrack those events.
Yeah, we can say we told you so.
Exactly. So Hello People comes out end of this week, right?
It does Friday.
I think there's obviously so much divisive rhetoric in the world right now.
Yeah.
And in this country specifically. And I think that, as always, the people who need the least of that are getting the most of that. So you can say that's people seeking asylum, etc. Yeah. And I just thought there was something really like almost sort of naively beautiful about that song, in the sense that really what you're trying to say, I think, is that well, not so much sort of like come on in, but almost like humanity is more than kind of what divides us. Is that fair to say?
Yes, I would say so. I mean, originally when we wrote it, it was kind of simply to just call out the racists a little bit, sort of challenge some of the hate speech that is out there. And, you know, it's a big argument, immigration, isn't it? But, you know, I think the song is more about, let's just be a bit more welcoming and, you know, not make scapegoats and victimize these people, which they seem to do quite a lot in the right-wing press. So it was, you know, just, it's kind of grown into something more than what it was. I mean, especially getting Stephen Fry involved, and it's all got a bit serious all of a sudden. But yeah, you know, I work in a school. I work with lots of different faiths and cultures and races, and you know, Britain is a great place, and it is better for having more people around us, I think. So
yeah, I mean, you know, as someone very much on the left, I agree with that completely, and I wouldn't want to sort of derail. I wouldn't really want to derail this conversation by sort of getting too analytical about immigration either, because I do think that, you know, I do think a lot of this is about kind of cultures and how cultures can coexist. You know, I do think there is a practical thing to talk about there, but ultimately the language that has been used about asylum seekers has just been so repugnant that actually just kind of, hello people. I just thought there was just a really beautiful sentiment to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's such a simple message, really. It's just a message of welcome in a positive, upbeat way. I mean, hello people, what's new? It's a chorus, isn't it? But you know, but it kind of says a lot in a real simple way.
I mean, you've always like lifted samples, you know, you've always kind of, I've loved that kind of magpie element to your songwriting that, you know, here it sounds like we're almost kind of back to that kind of UFO thing, but almost like here's like kind of a little passage from a radio station, or there's always been that, even down to the maybe questionable with the passage of time, Mark Chapman stuff. But what was so you were saying about the involvement of Stephen Fry? Like, did he get involved? This wasn't something you just lifted.
Well, what it was, he did this amazing podcast called Facts Over Fears, and me and him, we had this kind of idea of doing like a bit of a tape boy cut and pasted, like old school. So we did that, and we sent it off to him to get his blessing, and asked if he would like to be involved and if he'd like to jump on it. So, I mean, and he gave us the nod, which is great. I mean, it's quite miraculous, really. So we have got a little bit of history with him anyway. So it's not like we kind of contacted him out of the blue. But he has given us his blessing, which is lovely.
What was your previous history with him?
Well, on the second album, no, the third album.
Yeah, on Cha-Cha-Cha is the third record.
Yeah, I'm glad you remember it. There was a track called Glass Smash Jack, and Ian wrote a poem, and he came down to the studio and did the poem for us over this track. It's the closing track on the album. He was great. I mean, he was an absolute hero to us. And this was this was way back, you know, not long after Blackadder days and stuff like that. So, you know, he was quite funny.
I think Cha 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 sort of passed me by slightly because I
Yeah,
was I was still listening to Stigma. I was like, I'm not ready for a new record yet. I'm just going to listen to the one I've been listening to for a few years. I mean, you're not hanging around with records now, though, are you? I mean, after all that time of not having new music, you are really. I mean, what like the record before this is it 2022? Like, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. Yeah, I mean that first. I mean, it had been a long gap before doing that record. It was 27 years since we released anything.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of easy to do that. I mean, it was a bit of a leap of faith. The last album, Go Go Sapiens. It was kind of, can we do this? Is anybody going to be interested? It was quite scary. But we made it, and it's really easy to make records these days, and it's really easy to put your own records out these days. So, it's very much an EMF album where it's done completely by us, produced by us, wrote by us, released by us, mastered by us. So that was kind of, I think the last album was a bit of a stepping stone to where we're kind of getting to now. We've kind of been building it. It's taken quite a while to build it. It hasn't been instant. But this new record, we've got Ralph Jezard, who produced our Stigma, actually, James.
Yeah.
So it's kind of got that,
records.
it's got more of that EMF kind of sound to it, rather than Go Go Sapiens was a bit more me and Ian in our studios in the bedroom, sort of vibe, which is kind of cool. It did exactly what we wanted it to do, and it financed this album, which is all we ever wanted it to do, really. So yeah,
I mean, you could have really easily, I'm a big fan of music, kind of from your heyday, so to speak, and there are a lot of those acts I get to speak to for the podcast, and they're quite sort of a lot of them question whether they even want to make new music, or certainly like a record. And there's a lot of like, well, why would you invest in something that it's not a very popular time for albums? But you're kind of committed to putting a collection of songs on a record and still sticking to that format. I mean, was there ever a point where you just thought, oh well, we'll just play Unbelievable and we'll just make a bit of money? Like, it's EMF feels like an artistic concern again.
Well, that's nice of you to say. Yeah, it seems a little bit more important now, having that new material. It was a bit not soul destroying, but we did the odd gigs over the last couple of decades. It never really went anywhere. Couldn't see any sort of future or any coherence in it. So, but this has definitely given us a bit of impotence and kind of cheered us up a little bit, releasing new music. And we're songwriters. I mean, Ian's a great songwriter. He's got Grammys and stuff like that. And I love writing songs. So it would be a shame for us not to do that, really.
Yeah, because I guess it's funny. I was talking about this to my wife the other day. We were talking about how, obviously things are just so strange in the music industry in 2023. No one really kind of knows how to make money anymore unless you're Taylor Swift. And,
yeah,
even kind of live music venues closing. I mean, it's just sort of in disarray. The beauty and the chaos, so to speak.
Yeah.
But when I interview kind of people I liked a lot when I was growing up, a lot of them seem very content in the sense that, well, I had that experience when I was younger and being a pop star, basically. But like now, and then I kind of went off and I had a proper life, and then like now I get to sort of do gigs at weekends or a few festivals in the summer. But it's sort of best of both worlds, and I'm really happy with that. But like I say, with what it feels like you're kind of doing with EMF, whilst it's sort of not a full-time thing, you've said before you've got a job, and obviously Ian is like, sort of very in demand with what he does. It does feel like you are actually trying to sort of have an almost sort of like a second act.
Yeah, I mean, it would be wonderful if that did happen. We're pretty realistic as well. The world isn't waiting for new EMF albums. I know.
Speak for yourself. Speak for yourself.
Well, it would be lovely if that was the case, but we know our place, and that's kind of made it a little bit more enjoyable as well. There's no expectations. There's no desperation. Obviously, we'd love it if we were topping the charts and whatever things you have to do these days to be successful, but it's enough at the moment. If we can release records, go out and do some tours, do some festivals, what a great position to be in. That's such a buzz, and it kind of, my day job, it's not very exciting. So being able to go off and do things like that is, it's a result.
I was talking to Tony from TerraVision the other day. You remember TerraVision?
Yeah, he lives just up the road from me, actually.
Does he?
Yeah, because I'm a Yorkshire lad now. He's in Ilkley, yeah.
Oh, right, okay. So where are you based now?
I'm in a little village called Clapham, which is settled Skipton, sort of North Yorkshire.
So he told me, I think I played rugby in Skipton once. I'm from Doncaster, so I sort of vaguely remember my dad kind of racing to get me to a rugby match in Skipton.
Yeah.
And Tony from TerraVision was telling me that he makes dry stone walls now, right. But he like hides things in there. Like he'll kind of buy things from like charity shops and hide them in the wall, so that in like 100 years' time, when that wall sort of gets like demolished, they'll find something he put in there. And I was thinking, what a sort of artistically beautiful thing that was to do.
It must be just the way his brain is wired. It's quite creative, isn't it? What a creative thing to do. It's pretty out there, James.
Yeah, no, it's just funny how I guess I always, as a sort of, I'm younger than both of you, and like I hung on every word of the music that, bands of your era made. But it's just funny how sort of people almost like they find sort of more sort of satisfaction from their lives, maybe outside of the beauty and the chaos, once again, of like music careers. I mean, do you find your job satisfying?
I do. I find it really worthy for some reason. I mean, after it was quite hard after the initial success of EMF to sort of get a grip on life. It was kind of in the wilderness for a long time, and it took going back to university and doing the education thing, which I never did when I left school. I left school with nothing, just to be in a pop band. And yeah, it was probably one of the best things I've ever done. I know that's quite a strange thing to say, and also it's made me going back to the band now be in a much better position, confidence-wise and stuff like that. So yeah, and teaching's good. You never clock watch, and it's entertaining, and it's kind of it's good. It's a nice job.
Do any of the kids know who EMF are?
Well, not really. I mean, you're not really relevant to them, which is really good as well, because you can kind of get lost in your own bubble a little bit. Oh, as a pop star, #1 in America, and that means absolutely nothing to these kids. For them, you're just Sir, and you're just chasing them around the playground for smoking or vaping. People don't smoke anymore. Kids don't smoke anymore. Weird that.
Probably for the best. Probably.
Yeah. But parents' evenings can get a little bit funny.
Right. Okay. I mean, there was a teacher at my school. I can't remember his name. A German teacher, and he was an EMF fan.
Oh, right.
And I remember thinking he was like the coolest person on earth. I was like, you'd sort of, obviously, I was a kid. It was years before I ever sort of had ever ventured backstage or interviewed a band or whatever. But I remember him being like, oh, I was backstage at some EMF show, and I remember just being like, "You're amazing. I'm going to work really hard on my homework now because I want you to like me." It's just funny how it works. The passage of time.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Hopefully I bring a good attitude to my classroom, because I know what it was. I remember how much I hated school and authority and having to do stuff. And, like I said, I left school without anything. I had to leave a little bit early as well. So it was a bit. So, yeah, I kind of get these kids. I kind of get it,
If any of them are misbehaving, do you ever say to them, "You're so unbelievable"?
No, but I'm going to try it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. You can have that. No, I realized as I was asking that question, I was like, this is a really stupid thing to ask, but I was just thinking the people who listen to the podcast would maybe find it funny, so I said it anyway.
It's funny. I will. I'll tell you what. I'm going to film myself and try it and see. Let's have a look at the reaction.
Yeah, I like it. So when's the so the singles out end of this week? Do you think that, or do you care, or have you had conversations about it? Do you think there's a chance that it could do well? Because especially given the involvement of of Stephen Fry, it feels like, I mean, you know, sadly, Shane McGowan's died, so we sort of know who Christmas number one is going to be. But do you think it could be there or thereabouts?
I don't know. I'm so out of touch. I do not know what it takes to get a record in the top 10 or the top 5. I honestly don't know whether you have to sell loads of stuff. I mean, you have to have like playlists on radio and it'd be, you know, stuff like that. I really don't know. I mean, already it's lifted the profile of the band, and that's good. And that's great, which means when we go out in January, there'll be a bit of a buzz with the touring and hopefully get some better slots at festivals. So it's kind of doing its job. Whether it'll be successful, I don't know.
What's the song on the record that sounds a little bit glam rock?
That's called I've Been Down.
I thought that's the one.
Yeah, that's what Ian wrote. That's a very much an Ian sort of song.
It was. Am I okay to say that when I heard that song, I smiled and laughed all the way through it?
Yeah, you can say that if you want. I remember when Ian sent it me. I ignored it for a couple of weeks, thinking, I'm not having that. That's kind of just a bit too Gary Glitter for me. But
it is. It's well Glitter. Like, obviously,
it's got that groove in it.
Yeah, I've had a few conversations about Gary Glitter on the podcast recently, which is not something I like to do, but it is that thing where you sort of have to go, yeah, what an abhorrent human being, but also what amazing music he pioneered, you know? So I like the fact that when decent people have reclaimed that sound, you know, I think we could all do with a bit more glam.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, more glam, less of the dodgy stuff. That song, "The Day the Music Died," is very classic EMF as well. So much going on in that song.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Originally, it was quite synth based, but then we kind of got the band to play it. It was some vocal ideas I'd been knocking around for a while with. It's actually, I probably shouldn't say this because I might get sued, but I took the idea from, do you know Sunshine Superman by Donovan? All right. I'm going back to my 70s roots a little bit. It's a bit weird, isn't it? All this sort of rock stuff going. And then we got a brass section, and we got some. I'm really good friends with this guy called Athol, and they were the people who did the brass on Amy Winehouse's Back to Black.
Right.
They did the brass on it. Ian did an amazing arrangement with it. Yeah, I think I wanted that to be the opener for the album, but obviously Hello People's a good opener, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I just like those EMF songs best when it's like, you know, there's almost the sort of, I mean, I'm a big brass guy anyway. I think most music can be improved by having brass on it, but also I just like those sort of EMF songs best when they feel like just like a sort of scrapbook, you know, there's like a bit of this, bit of that, bit of this, you know. I love all that, you know. I am going to listen to Donovan though and see if I can hear any of that, because that's not the first place my brain went to.
No, okay, yeah. I hope I don't get sued now.
I interviewed Donovan just like literally like a day before COVID happened in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't really interview Donovan. You more sort of ask him a question and then like you sit there for 30 minutes while he talks. So he might be a bit busy talking to, you know, come after you. I wasn't expecting when I started having a conversation with you that I'd be talking to a member of EMF about goth, or that I would inadvertently diss Donovan on the podcast. So this has been a conversation of firsts.
It's lovely. It's a conversation, and it's just flowing. It's great.
Just flowing. So,
you have hit record, haven't you?
I have hit record. I did do an episode the other day where I didn't hit record, which doesn't happen very often. So nice. I'm sort of avoiding the PR at the moment. Anyway, so right, let's get some dates right. So single at the end of the week, album.
Well, I'm guessing January.
I mean, that's precise, James.
Well, it's kind of weird. I mean, the great thing about being your own record label is you can kind of just play it by ear, can't you? You know, it's awful, isn't it? But it's kind of just, you know, it's liberating, isn't it? I think we should probably drop it when we do the tour. So we're going to go out on tour in January. There you go.
Yeah, there'll be a lot going on in January. I mean, I'm just looking at the press release here.
Okay, you know more than me, then, James.
I mean, it doesn't have a date. It doesn't have a date on
Just
it.
January.
I mean, it does have a date for the single, but it doesn't have a date for the record. But it does say that you're going on tour in January and February, though.
Well, it would be nice to have the album out so people can listen to the songs. Otherwise, we'll be playing brand new songs in the set.
I'm a little bit worried. I'm a little bit worried about this gig. You've got the Cluny. Have you played the Cluny before?
No, where's that?
It's in Newcastle. It used to be sort of my stomping ground, and my band used to play at the Cluny quite a lot. Yeah. And unless they've done something in the subsequent years since I've lived in Newcastle, it's a very bouncy stage. There's not a lot of reinforcement, and I'm a little bit worried that given the energetic nature of EMF Live, even at your age, it could be a problem. So please be careful when you do that show.
Okay. I thought you were going to say something about putting on the pounds and,
God, no. I feel bad for even saying at your age. After I said that,
was age, and okay. Well, I will take that on board, and I will not be so energetic in Newcastle.
Yeah, I vaguely remember like playing, and that when you do that thing when you put a drink and by your microphone, you put a drink there on the floor, and I vaguely remember having a bit of an accident.
All right, okay.
Not not weeing myself or anything. I think I spilled something, So
right.
I'm just going to talk about something very important before we wrap up.
All right.
You were very dismissive about UFOs before.
Earlier in this conversation.
Yeah, you almost dismissed it, almost like the sort of folly of youth, and that surprises me. For someone who is like, I don't know, for someone who is quite a thoughtful person, I'm quite surprised that you are a bit skeptical.
Maybe I was just a little bit skeptical of some of the people who get obsessed with this kind of stuff. We're living in a world now where it's lots of, what do they call it? Not fake news, when people believe in stuff and
like conspiracies.
Yeah. And maybe I was just a little bit, I don't want to end up like Ian Brown, do I? I've had my jabs. Do you know what I mean? No, but it's kind of quite. I'm not. Yeah, sorry, I was dismissive. Maybe I was just trying to, be a bit.
I mean, some of it's journalistic, and some of it is because I actually think that sometimes conspiracies like flirt with the truth, and that's kind of the danger of them in a sense. But I do think that from what I know about conspiracies, that actually UFOs aren't really considered like part of the lexicon of conspiracy theories anymore. Like people who are into conspiracies, actually the conspiracy that they believe is that UFOs are a distraction, that it isn't actually something real that's going on. So I think you're okay. I think you're okay to be interested in UFOs. I think because I think it's happening. I genuinely think it's happening. And, I'm going to listen to Stigma as disclosure happens.
Right, brilliant. This is interesting, isn't it? This is good. So yeah, we are due a visit, and they're already here. You think they're here already, James?
Yeah.
That is great. Yeah,
I truly do. I think there's something really weird going on. Like, I mean, there's no way to say any of this stuff without sounding like you're insane, right? That's the problem. Is that you say this stuff and you just sound insane. But I do think that, and regular listeners to the podcast will be aware that I've said this a few times now to musicians that may or may not even be interested in the slightest in UFOs. And at least with you, there's a sort of an in,
Yeah.
I do think that they will explain a lot of what all of this is about. And I do think they're here. I think there's too many things in the skies that people are seeing that can't be explained. Like things that like really respected people within like the military or scientists are saying, not cranks, people who know about aviation and they know about like the design of aircraft, and they're going, we have no idea what this is. And I find that I find that bonkers.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, you've obviously done a lot more, looked into it a lot more than I.
Yeah.
But hey, they may save humanity, so it could be a good thing.
Exactly. EMF and aliens saving humanity.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for your time, man. This has been lovely. And like I say, I feel like I always wanted to tell a member of EMF how much that second record mattered to me. I would actually hazard a guess that I probably like that record more than anyone else on earth. So I'm pleased I got to do that.
That's incredible. Yeah. Thank you.
I don't really. I think sometimes when intense music journalists like myself say things like that, I sometimes wonder whether bands know what to say. But
I honestly don't know how to reply to that. But
yeah. You. Well, what I think we should do, because I think this is a conversation that we might struggle to kind of wrap up. Actually, I'm not quite sure how to get out of this conversation. Okay. So like in movies when people don't want to they don't want to say goodbye, so they sort of just go, "See you tomorrow." You know, that bit of that trope.
Yeah, goodbyes are hard, aren't they?
So what I'm going to do, yeah, exactly that. So what I'm going to do is say, "I'll see you tomorrow," and then I'm going to log off.
All right, ta-ra for a bit.